John Harper, a wealthy man in his late 70s, sat alone in his silver Mercedes, tapping his thumb impatiently against the steering wheel. The air conditioner hummed, barely keeping the Kentucky heat at bay. Retired and wealthy from a life of business in finance, John was used to things working in his favor. But that day, he found himself stranded with a flat tire, far from the comforts of his pristine mansion on the outskirts of town. After a few attempts to call for roadside assistance with no luck, he sighed and resigned himself to the fact that he'd have to wait. Just as he started to feel a tinge of frustration bubbling up, he saw a figure walking toward him down the road. A young boy, maybe 13 or 14, wearing a faded t-shirt and worn-out sneakers, approached with a determined expression. John watched as the boy's eyes narrowed, examining the car before giving John a polite but confident nod. "Got a flat, sir?" the boy asked, his voice steady. "Yes." "Yes, I do," John replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. "I was hoping for a bit of help, but my phone's got no signal out here." The boy gave a little smile. "I can help with that," he said, kneeling beside the tire without hesitation. "My grandpa taught me how to change a tire last summer. Do you have a spare?" John gestured to the trunk, watching as the boy opened it and pulled out the necessary tools. The young boy worked swiftly, his hands moving with a quiet confidence that seemed almost beyond his years. As John stood there, he felt a strange humility creeping in, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wanted to offer the boy something in return, but the young man hardly looked up, focusing intently on the task at hand. After a few minutes, the boy finished, wiping his hands on his jeans and stepping back. "All done," he said simply, offering a small, satisfied smile. John reached into his wallet and pulled out a few bills, holding them out to the boy. "Here, take this. I really appreciate your help." But the boy took a step back, raising his hand politely. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything. Just happy to help." Stunned, John stood there, money still in hand, as he watched the boy turn and walk away down the road. The interaction had left him moved somehow, though he couldn't quite put a finger on why. Alone now, he slipped the money back into his wallet and got back into his car, watching in the rearview mirror as the boy's figure grew smaller in the distance. For the rest of his drive, John's thoughts kept drifting back to the boy. There was a quiet dignity about him, a self-assurance that wasn't born from money or privilege, but from something deeper. That night, as he sat alone in his lavish home, John found himself unable to shake the image of the boy walking away, with nothing but a smile. That evening, John sat in the leather armchair of his study, surrounded by shelves of books. He rarely opened. The room was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. His dinner, a perfectly prepared steak and asparagus, sat untouched on the side table. He couldn't stop thinking about the boy. John had encountered thousands of people in his lifetime, business partners, employees, investors. Most interactions revolved around negotiations, favors, and deals. There was always an exchange, a price, or an expectation. But this boy, this stranger, had helped him for no reason other than kindness. The next morning, John couldn't resist the urge to find the boy. He didn't know why, but something inside him felt unfinished. Maybe it was guilt, maybe gratitude, or maybe just curiosity. Whatever it was, he found himself driving down the same stretch of road, scanning the horizon for any dot sign of the boy. Hours passed as he stopped at gas stations and small diners, asking anyone who would listen if they'd seen a young boy fitting the description. Most shrugged or shook their heads, until finally an older woman behind a counter at a small cafe spoke up. "Sounds like you're talking about Jonathan," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "That boy's always helping folks around here. Lives with his mama over in Vermont." "Vermont," John repeated, making a mental note. "Thank you." The town of Vermont was an hour away, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachians. The drive was scenic, but John barely noticed. His mind was racing with questions. What kind of life did this boy have? What kind of family raised someone like that? When he arrived in Vermont, the streets were quiet, lined with modest homes and small businesses. He asked a few locals about Jonathan and was eventually pointed to a small house on the edge of town. The house was worn but tidy, with a front porch that sagged, slightly under its own weight. John parked his car and hesitated, for a moment unsure of what he would even say. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. It opened a moment later, revealing a woman in her early 40s. She looked tired but kind, her eyes sharp and curious as she sized him up. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Good morning," John said, clearing his throat. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I believe I met your son yesterday. Jonathan, right?" He helped me with a flat tire. Her expression softened instantly. "That sounds like my Jonathan," she said with a small smile. "He's always helping folks." "I just wanted to thank him properly," John said. "He wouldn't accept anything from me yesterday." She nodded, stepping aside, to let him in. "He's out back. You're welcome to wait." John stepped inside, taking in the modest surroundings. The furniture was old but clean, the walls adorned with family photos, and a few hand-drawn pictures that looked like they came from a much younger Jonathan. It was a far cry from his own home, with its pristine surfaces and expensive artwork, yet something about this space felt warmer, more alive. He followed her out to the backyard, where Jonathan was repairing the fence. The boy looked up, surprised to see John. "Hey, mister," Jonathan said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you doing here?" John smiled, feeling strangely nervous. "I wanted to thank you again. You helped me when I really needed it, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it." Jonathan shrugged, his expression easy and genuine. It wasn't a big deal, but to John, it was, and he was determined to show it. Jonathan leaned against the fence, his curious gaze fixed on John. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The boy's calm demeanor made John feel slightly out of place, as though he were the one being judged. "I don't think you realize what a big deal it was," John finally said, breaking the silence. "People don't usually help strangers without expecting something in return." Jonathan tilted his head slightly, as if puzzled by the statement. "I don't see it like that," he replied. "If someone needs help and I can do it, why wouldn't I?" John was struck by the simplicity of the boy's logic. He looked past Jonathan to the yard. The fence was patched together with mismatched wood, the grass uneven and sparse. Behind the house, an old swing set leaned precariously, its chains rusted and broken. It was clear that Jonathan's family didn't have much, but they made do with what they had. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," John said, meaning it. "Your mother must be proud." Jonathan grinned, glancing back toward the house. "She works hard. I just try to help out where I can." John was quiet for a moment, absorbing the boy's words. He thought of his own childhood, spent in a house much like this one. His parents had worked tirelessly to make ends meet, teaching him the value of hard work and perseverance. Over the years, he had drifted away from those lessons, caught up in the pursuit of wealth and status. Now, standing in this yard, he felt an odd sense of nostalgia and regret. "I'd like to do something for you and your family," John said at last. Jonathan straightened up, his expression cautious. "We're okay, mister. We don't need anything." "It's not about need," John insisted. "It's about what's right. You helped me, and I'd like to return the favor." Before Jonathan could respond, his mother stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Jonathan, you better come inside and wash up before lunch," she called. Then her eyes shifted to John. "Would you care to join us? It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome." John hesitated, unaccustomed to such an invitation, but the sincerity in her voice left him no room for excuses. "I'd like that," he said, following her into the house. Inside, the kitchen smelled of freshly baked bread and roasted vegetables. The table was small, surrounded by mismatched chairs, but it was set with care. John took a seat, feeling strangely out of place in his tailored suit amidst the humble surroundings. Jonathan washed his hands at the sink and joined them, his easy smile never faltering. As they ate, John found himself drawn into their conversation. Jonathan talked about his school, his friends, and his dreams of becoming an engineer. His mother shared stories about the community, speaking with a quiet pride about the people who looked out for one another. John listened intently, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. For all his wealth and success, his own home felt cold and empty compared to this modest house filled with laughter and genuine connection.